Welcome to Insight Builder channel, large language model automators, Python experts, and my dear friends. Integrating WebSocket and Django AI shop. Implementing WebSocket client server alongside a Django server. Right now we are seeing a lot of tech stack here. So you are seeing JavaScript, JSON, Python, Django, HTML, and in the middle that you are seeing here is the WebSocket. You guys must have seen my earlier videos. If not, try to look at the earlier videos where I discuss about the benefits of WebSockets and how to implement basic WebSocket, standalone WebSocket that is, and a couple of demos on how WebSockets can be used in the wild. Now, the idea of integrating WebSocket with the Django AI shop, the shop that tries to connect with the database and provide AI completions, that's pretty interesting. The reason is, just take a look at it. So the Django backend is powered with the SQLite DB right now. So the front end is served with the help of Jinja templates. In the middle comes two important points. There is a JavaScript client that is going to connect the HTML document objects, that is the HTML tags, on the front end with the socket server that we are going to build. And the socket server itself, we need to build it in Python. We need to have a PV ORM to query the database WebSockets and OpenAI integration in the Django AI views for completions. So all these things have to be incorporated in order to get this architecture. So if you guys take a look at my earlier videos demos, I'll be attaching that video's description and attaching the video's link in along with this video. Take a look at that. The demo, you must have seen how the WebSocket can be used to stream the data that is already present in the database, that is this database. So this is the overall architecture. We see that WebSocket server stores the client side, WebSocket server stores the data, client side triggers the message, WebSocket server connects to the remote API. So this is all done in the backend. And there is a database that is also connected with the help of PV. So that's what you're seeing. In the next video, we'll be diving into how WebSocket can be integrated with the database using the PV ORM. So instead of using SQL Alchemy, we can use PV. It's much more expressive and very simple to use. Also, it has got a interesting script or a module that can connect with the Django databases and extract the table details and give it to you. So it's a very neat trick. Fine. So, but what you are seeing here is pretty complicated. So it's going to take a considerable amount of effort to explain this. What I'm going to do is, as usual, I'm going to simplify it. A simpler architecture will be to have a Django front end, I mean a Django server and a backend, along with a front end that gets served like this, what you're seeing here. Right, this is what I'm planning right now. This particular front end will be served by the Django views, but the server that you are looking at here, the WebSocket server itself, will only serve a very simple text output. So which will send these text outputs like acknowledge 0, acknowledge 1, etc. And it will ask you whether you wanna continue. And if you say that open again, then it will continue. If you say close, the tab will get closed. Now, this implementation is what you are going to see as a demo right now. I'm going to zoom in a bit so you guys can see it. There is nothing much here. It's a very simple HTML page, which is right now served using the root URL of the home URL of a Django server. You can see that here 127001, and let me bring the server also for your view. So this is the server that is running in the backend, and you can see that whenever I initiate this, you can see that my this particular request goes to the server, and you can see the updates here. So I'm zooming in a bit, and in parallel I am having the WebSocket server that is also running, and this server, WebSocket server, is running in localhost 7568 port, and these are all the various details of the WebSocket server request, the request object. That is what I mean to say is this particular yellow object that you're seeing, that object has its own meta details, meta parameters that we can extract using the WebSocket objects. We'll be seeing those things when we dive into the code. Now let us go back and let us open the tab. Once you open the tab, it will start pushing out the data. After pushing two outputs, it will ask whether you want to continue. So if I click on open tab, it will say okay, the loop continued. Again, after two more acknowledgements, it will ask whether you want to continue. I can say click on close tab and it will say that it is closing tab. But again, if I open tab, it will start from acknowledge 4. So basically, once I click on close tab, it will not proceed further at all. So in fact, for that matter, if I don't click on open tab right now, it will not proceed either. But the point here is that you can control the flow of data that is coming from this server that you are seeing here, that is running. So you can see the data that is coming here. I am printing it just to ensure that the data is coming back from the Django to this server. So there are two servers running. So there is Django server that is running, and there is the WebSocket server running. Okay, what it takes. So let us go back. So what it takes in order to get these things to integrate, because there are a couple of challenges. If you think about it, the HTML page that you saw right now, this entire page has been rendered with the help of the Django views. I'll be showing you the Django view, just a second. The views function of the Django page that you are seeing here, this particular page, is done using the simple index function, which has been connected with the URLs, and it is just rendering this index.html. And this index.html is Jinja template in a Jinja template based HTML. So let me share the HTML also, so that you guys can see the code. So what you are seeing here is the index.html code, and you can see here that it is extending base HTML. It is loading static folder. It is having a title called index. So you can see the title in this location. You can see the title here, and it is inside a block, and you can see the content of the entire the buttons and the outputs that you are seeing, etc., is actually held inside the block content. Apart from that, there are two buttons that you see, open tab and close tab, which is having the ID of tab and no tab. And finally, there is UL that has been created, the unordered list that has been created with the ID called place, and that is where this data is getting updated. So if I converted that to ordered list, so for an example, if I go here, if I converted this to ordered list instead of unordered list, that is instead of UL, if I make it to OL, let us see what happens. And I think there might be a challenge, but let us see. I'm going to click on home first. Now I have changed the index.html that is getting served from the page, from the Django server, and you see here it's instead of dot bullet, it is actually giving me a number here, and you can see that it is giving wanna continue as number 3, and that is happening because of the way the JavaScript has been created. So I'll be showing you the JavaScript next. So if you click on open tab, it will continue further, and it's saying acknowledge 2 and 3. This is taking a little bit of a time because there is a random time wait that is happening at the backend. Now if I say close tab, it will close the tab. Okay. Now you see how this HTML, which is actually pretty small, but this is actually small because the base.html is very big. So the base.html has got its own link, which is importing the Bootstrap CSS. So this CSS is already present. The entire code repo will be shared with you guys in the GitHub, and the link of the repo will be shared with you guys in the description. So you will be able to take a look at this page without any issue. Next comes the body. You can see that I am using the home as index, and this is where the block content is getting updated, and there is a footer and there is a simple header. So all these things are already coded, and it is there inside the Django server. Now all these things has to work together, right? I am trying to load this with the Django server, but if I don't load it through the Django server, and if I directly open the index.html, this index.html, let me show you how it will look. Now that is how the index.html will look if I directly open it from my GitHub repo folder. So you can see the path here. But if I open it here, the same the same index.html looks really beautiful. I wouldn't say that it's super awesome page, but yeah, it cuts the requirement, correct? So it's having good colors, it's having a good font, and here it's all out of the loop, right? And you can see that this is printing something gibberish here. So this is actually the Jinja template that is getting printed here, and this is not what you want. Yeah, here also, if I right now try to create the connection, to my knowledge it should actually connect. Like if I am going to try and use this page, and if I want to update the data that is coming out, if you go here, so I'm actually trying to see whether it will directly connect and whether it will directly pull. But you will see this particular client.js. So this is the script that powers this flow. So if I click on open tab, what is actually pulling the data from the WebSocket server is the JavaScript that you saw here. This client.js will not get served if I am directly opening it from the index.html. It will actually fail because this is served through the Django's static folder, and it can be only work through that. If you want, you can actually modify this and you can test it out. If you go here and if I try to modify this to just client.js, also it will create a problem, because in my case the path will be different. So the index.html path and the client.js path will be different. Those things we will be explaining next. Let's go back. So yeah, this is a kind of a technology that is bringing multiple things into a single application, right? So this is also something a bit of a challenge to most of us, which we need to right now start getting better. We have seen that the front end, the HTML page, the server that we saw at the backend for both Django and WebSocket server, and we were seeing that by clicking on the buttons we were able to try to manage the flow of data from the server. Now how these things have been coded and where these things are kept. The most important thing is where the client.js, where the HTML index.html, and where the actual server, the socket server is running. All these things we will be diving into next 10 to 15 minutes. All right, let's go back to the window, and we will kill the WebSocket server. This is a WebSocket server that was running. So this is the WebSocket server, and I have killed it right now. So if I try going back here, and if I try to execute this page, you'll see that it doesn't work. There is no any updates. And if you go and look at the inspect, and if you look at the console, you'll see that the WebSocket connection has been failed. That is because the server has been stopped. Next, what you're going to do is we are going to stop the Django server itself. So I'm going to stop the Django server, and now if I go back and if I am going to refresh this page will not refresh because the server has been stopped, and this particular page is coming back because it's there in the buffer, but the page is no more, was restored back from the cache. You can see that here, right? So it's not the actual server. Fine. Okay, we have seen how these things work, but now how to build it from the ground up. We are going to do some couple of stuff here. So as you see, this is a very long path, right? So this entire path is kept inside the Python DE learners data GitHub repo. So you can get this particular sock object folder inside WebSockets exploring folder. So you can take a look at that repo in the description below. What we are going to do is I will actually show you the folder tree so that you guys can understand what's exactly happening. So I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to clear the screen. The reason why I'm showing this is that you guys have to understand where the static folder is, where the client.js file is, and where the index.html is. These three things are very important. If these three things are not understood, then you will not be able to bring the WebSocket server, that is this particular WebSocket server, and you cannot bring the backend Django server. So Django server that is running the entire HTML page in the backend using the Jinja templating, that you will not be able to bring, and you will have to struggle a lot by building the page by yourself. I wouldn't want you to do that because it's going to be tedious, right? Let's go back. Now let us do an ls. You will see our dir. In my case, I am in Windows, my bad. Here I am going to take a look at this particular folder. So there are lots of other projects that I have done on WebSockets. You can take a look at that also. The point here is, if I go into sock object, you'll see that it is a basic Django project which has a DB database, which has a Manage.py, and it is also having an app. All these things are visible here, and also it has got this sock_server.py. So this is the WebSocket server, and then there is the templates. This is where the index.html will reside. So again, I am repeating, the index.html files will stay inside this templates, and this templates is right alongside the manage.py. So keep the manage.py as your reference. Okay, manage.py will be in the root of the sock object project. Like, for an example, let me show you. Let us do a cd ... And I have already installed Django. I have already got everything installed into webc.py, and in order to get this virtual environment up and running, I'm just taking a detour. You have to do a pip install using the requirements.txt. So the requirements.txt will be present inside this folder. Requirements.txt will be present inside basic socket front end. So this folder will contain the requirements.txt. So you can create a new virtual environment, and if you do a pip install r requirements.txt, whatever I am able to run here, you will be able to run it in your system also. So ensure that you do that before you try these things. Fine, let us go back, and we were actually discussing on how to look at and how to place the templates folder, how to place the static folder, and how to work with the Client.js and index.html. Let's proceed. So let me create a new project. So start project YT tutorial. So this is the project that I'm creating. The moment I create the project using Django admin, what will happen is there will be a new folder under WebSocket exploring path, and you can see that the folder is created here. And if I go into the folder YT tutorial, and if I do a dir, you will see that manage.py is present here, and then there is YT tutorial. So this is the project folder. Project folder along with YT, the manage.py will be present in the same path, same level of the path. That is under YT tutorial, right? That is where you will actually find your templates. So if you scroll up, that is where you will find your templates. So you can see that, right? The project, sock object project, and templates, the manage.py, all are at the same level. Even the db.sqlite 3 is also on the same level. So keep this setup in your mind. So this sock_server, we will discuss about it a little later. Next comes the application, the app that you're going to create. The app in our case is called as push data. We are actually pushing data, so I named the app with the same term. So let me actually go back, because I'm not going to use that YT tutorial project. It's of no use. So let us go into sock object, and let us do a dir, and let us now try to move into the push data. So where you can actually see the other files and folders that are making a difference. So here you can see that there is urls.py and views.py, and there is static folder. So the static folder should be inside your application. Yeah, there are other ways to deploy static folder, but keeping this static folder inside your application is going to be much more comfortable to manage. That's the key aspect. So but it is going to need one more change. So I'll be showing that in a couple of minutes. What happens here is that the views.py, the static has to be together, and when you are going to show the HTML page, the JavaScript, that JavaScript is going to come from the static folder. So let me actually go into static folder and let me do a dir. You'll see that I have a lot of files here. I have the min CSS, bootstrap min CSS, min.js, Client.js. So all these 3 files are going to be in the front end. So let us go back. Let us look at the front end, and you'll see that in the front end, none of those files are there. So where are these things? I can only see this Client.js. What about the bootstrap? That is actually present in the base.html. So if you go to base.html, at the top, you will see that bootstrap min.css is present. So both of these files are getting served from static folder. So this static folder you have to configure. In order to configure this, you have to understand a couple of things. So let us go back to the server. And what you're going to do is, I am going to do a cd ... and I am going to start the server. Let me do this Python Manage.py and run server. Once you run the server, you'll see that this path gets printed. Okay, this path is getting printed because the Settings.py file is getting executed by the Django server. So let me show you the Settings.py file. The Settings.py file will be inside the sock object. So this is the template that we saw in the CLI. So we saw sock object, we saw the push data app, we saw the templates, we saw Manage.py, and we saw sock server, right? We are going into the sock object. We are going into the sock object, and inside that you will see Settings.py. This is where you will see this particular base directory. This base directory is looking at the parent of the parent directory. So what actually this does? So how is this working? The place where this code is getting executed is actually inside the sock object folder here. Correct? It is inside here, but we want it to move out to sock object, and it has to be in that location. So we want this Settings.py path to be moved out to sock object, and that is where we want the templates to be present. So that is the main point we need to be concerned about. Okay, we are talking about the static folder, but here I am talking about templates. Why? Let me actually give you the background. If you scroll down the Settings.py, here we have updated the app details, and scrolling down you will see that I have given the DARs called as templates. So this is where the Django Jinja templates will get updated. So all these things that you see here, the HTML pages, that will be stored inside the templates folder. So this templates folder has to be in the base location that you cannot modify. Okay, so this base location is actually in the same level of the Manage.py. Okay, so keep Manage.py as your reference always, because that is what is running the server, right? So that's going to be the root. Next comes, if you scroll down further, you will see that we are going to create these variables. Excuse me, these variables. So this static URL, static root, static files dir. So this is the important step. The static files dir has to be at the level where we want the static the files to be the client.js or the min.js, bootstrap.min.js. So all these files should be served from this static folder. If this static folder is not properly created, or if it is not properly set up, then your static this particular load static keyword, load static option will not work. And if that doesn't work, then you will not be able to load the static tag, and you will not be able to get the path of this particular file. This is important because Django, when it is going to load this particular page, it is going to resolve all this Jinja templates into actual path. And in order to do that, you need to provide these information in the Settings.py. That's what we are doing. And if this is wrong, then your things will not work out. Okay, let us go back to the code. So you can see that here the static folder that we are serving it is from directly under sock object. Okay, the main sock object, below that there is static, and this static is on the same level of manage.py. So keep manage.py as your reference, right? So we have the static at the just a second, manage.py. So where is the static? So I was telling that the static folder should be at the level of manage.py, but here we see that this folder is missing. So how is it working? So this is one of the challenges that I was facing. What happens is, actually my static folder is inside the app push data, and that is where I kept the static folder, right? This was creating a problem. When I am running this demo, this actually worked, but there were times this did not. In the morning, when I was trying to put up this particular video, where I was having the same setup, but the static folder was not working. So if in case if your static folder is not working, and if your the files inside the static folder is not getting referred, then you need to actually update this. You need to update this particular path, and you need to add additional. You can actually create a kind of a loop, and you can kind of a list, and you can add the path join, and you can say base dir. So this is a mechanism to foolproof that if there is any problem, you can avoid that. So you actually give the path of your app to the static folder. So this is where my static folder is, right? So you can give that also. So this is a better way of telling Django that if I am not able to find the static folder in this location, then jump to this location. So now if you go back to the server, you will see that this is actually okay. It came out because I was editing it, and let me run the server again. Now you'll see that there a list of two things are getting updated, and you can see, okay, there is a error here. Let me correct that. So it should be in this way. So if I update this right now, I am in Windows, so that is why this modification is happening. So now if you see that this push data static, let me zoom out a bit so you guys can see better. So you can see that this is one path, that is sock object static, and this is a second path which is having sock object, push data, and static. So both of these things I am adding it. Why I am telling you this? If that path is not appropriately set, if this path is not appropriately set, then your one second, let me close this and let me zoom out a bit. This client.js will not get detected when you are trying to load the page, and if this client.js doesn't get detected, then you will not be able to get the front end to connect with the backend. So right now I have actually started the Django backend. So the server is running, and if you look at the console, you'll see the WebSocket connection to the localhost is not there, and this is happening because of the client.js, right? The client.js should be present for getting the data from the WebSocket server. So that's very, very important. So this section is something that you guys have to practice quite a lot to get it correct in the beginning. Once you are comfortable, once you are making some mistakes and you realize, go through this video a couple of times and you realize this, then it is going to be straightforward. Fine. Now let us actually move to the client.js. So let us actually look at the code of client.js. Let's open that and let us look at client.js. It is inside the push data static, and you can click on client.js, and client.js file is pretty simple. So it's actually having just 16 lines. It's loading. The window add event listener is loaded once the DOM is loaded, and here is the WebSocket object that is created, and it is connected to the localhost. So I'll be showing you how this is created. And then comes the document query selector, which is trying to select the open button. So the open button in the front end, this button, open button, has the tap ID. So if you look at it, it has got the tap ID, right? And the close button has got no tap ID. This ID is what you are going to refer in this page, right? And so you are referring this here and here. So when this open tab, that is the tap ID button, is clicked, it will actually send a got click console log, that is a print, and it will send to the WebSocket server a string called as data. And when no tap is clicked, that is the close button is clicked, the console.log will print closing, and there will be a string that is close sent back to the document query selector. So both of these things are done by the button clicks. Finally, the WebSocket by itself, once there is any kind of this execution that is happening, the WebSocket server will start sending the messages to the front end. So let us actually go back and let us remove this, and let us actually start the socket server. So where is the socket server? As I already told you, the socket server is on right at the place where the Manage.py is present. So let me actually show you that also, so that you guys can understand again. This is one of the important aspects of integrating Django and WebSocket, because if you don't know where the files have to be kept, the servers are not going to click and you will not get the output. So keep that in mind, or else you are going to waste a lot of time. As you can see here, the socket server script, this is a socket server script. I will come to this in a couple of seconds. This socket server script is present at the same location as Manage.py. So I'm going to start the socket server using watch me do module in Python. You guys can take a Google search on this. You will understand why it is used for, and you can execute this. So now the excuse me, yeah, the server has been started right now, and let us go back. Let us open the tab. Let us again refresh the page, and you will see that it has navigated to this page. And if I click on open tab, you will see it has got a click, and we see the data flowing here. And every time I click on open tab, you'll see got the click. Now if I close the tab, it will say closing, and you'll see that the loop stops. Now all these things are happening because of this Client.js that we just now saw. This is a pretty simple JavaScript, right? It's not having a lot of complex logic or loop or anything. The point here is that how this inner.html is getting this list, and how it is placed inside the ordered list or unordered list. These things are HTML basics. I am not going to dive into it, or I'm not even diving into JavaScript here, because JavaScript has its own learning curve. I believe that you guys have to look at other resources that is available around here. My interest is in showing you how the socket server works, because that's where the WebSocket actually resides. The socket server has we are going to work with serve function in WebSockets, and also we are going to use async.io. We are not going to use JSON, and we are going to use random. There are two functions present here. Both are async. So you have async main and async handler, and the main function is run whenever you are going to execute this script. So when I execute this script here, the main function runs, and whatever you're seeing here, I'll be explaining it to you next. Once this function is run, it goes to this area and async with serve. So this actually starts serving the WebSocket server on localhost at 7568. So this 7568 is what we connect when we use the WebSocket client in the front end. So this is what is happening here. So if you click here, you can actually see the client.js also. So you can see, if you scroll up, there are various ways to work with these client.js files. You can see that I am connecting to the localhost 7568. So that is how it works. Let us go back. Once this serve is done, the await async.io.future is going to keep this function running forever. That is the purpose of this future method. After this starts, the serve is going to serve the handler function. The serve function is going to serve the handler function. Let us open the handler function. The handler function is going to take the WebSocket as the argument. So this WebSocket is coming from the client.js. So when the client.js is initiating this WebSocket object in JavaScript, that is going to throw a WebSocket object back to the Python script, Python server, WebSocket server. And once the WebSocket is here, you can actually get the path of the WebSocket server. You can get the request headers also. That's what you're seeing here. So you're seeing the path here, and you can see the request header. So the header contains a lot of information. It's actually a dictionary, or we can say that it's kind of a text data with a lot of colons, and you can start extracting data like the IP address, the port that it is connecting, what are the languages, a lot of stuff, correct? And you can also extract the user agents. So in this way, you can control who is actually connecting to the WebSocket. You can also see the secret WebSocket key and the extensions here. These are all important if you are going to use security later, but that's not what our intention is. We have to understand a bit of a logic that has been placed here. The idea is using async for message in WebSocket. So this is one of the important syntax you guys you'll use again and again. So try to type the syntax when you're working on this particular project. Take this entire code and type it. That's very important, because you're going to make some mistakes, and when you're going to run that your code, you will actually use this code that I've provided here as reference. So this async for message is going to wait for the WebSocket to receive some messages. So whenever I'm going to click open tab, so this particular click is going to send a message to the server, and that's what you are seeing here. So whenever I click on open tab, you will see that the data is flowing here. Let us go back, and once the message is in, so it is printed and a loop is started, right? And this while true loop is going to create this acknowledgement, and it is going to keep on sending it to the WebSocket. From the WebSocket, it is going to send it back to the front end, and the front end is going to process it. So this is where the on message attribute is, and this on message attribute or function here, it's little confusing whether it's a function or an attribute, but yeah, it's kind of a hybrid. This on message, once it receives a message, like for an example acknowledge 0, it will take it and it will place it inside the list, and then it will be placing it inside in this location. That's how it is getting built. You can see that here, and you can actually look at the elements, and you can see that it is getting built at the bottom. So if you open this up, you will see that once I click on open tab, you will see that it's getting updated, right? You can see that here. So that's what this particular step does. Let us go back. So this is having a lot of jumping back, right? There are multiple scripts that is working here. There are platforms like JavaScript and Python, and also there is Django in the middle. Getting all these things to properly interact with and ensure that how the actual mechanism or the logic is working is going to be daunting when you're going to connect your the AI shop itself. If you're going to create a Django web server, and if you're going to connect it properly, then you need to understand these things, and you should practice a couple of times. Next is you can actually use async IO to sleep for a couple of seconds, and this is where the index is getting incremented, and every even number of the index, I am actually going into this loop where the WebSocket sends and asks me in the front end that whether I want to continue, and it awaits for a data. So this await is going to wait till I send any kind of a message back to the server. So this line is very, very important. Even though this particular line is going to continuously take the messages, but when I use this line, this is going to wait on top of this message. So this is a kind of a tricky way of working. It took a couple of trials for me to understand this. Maybe this pattern is not acceptable way of working, but at the end of the day, we have to show and solve a problem, right? I wanted to show and solve a problem where I can start pushing data to the front end, and I want to open a tab where it starts pushing the data, and if I click on close tab, it stops pushing the data. So if I click on close tab right now, you'll see nothing is happening unless it asks wanna continue. After that, only the closing tab comes in. So this is the idea of await and async. in case of the web server, and in case of all this internet, there are lots of delays that can happen in the packet reaching. So that's why you have this await and async. You guys have to take a look at that discussion separately elsewhere. So I'm not going to dive into that. It's a very deep and very interesting concept also. Fine. So this is where the logic goes in, and if I give int data equal to close, then the WebSocket will reply telling that I'm going to close it. But in fact, it's not actually closing the connection itself. It's just telling that it's closing the connection, right? If I don't, if I don't click on anything sending, then what will happen is it will say, okay, loop is continued. So whatever I'm sending from the front end. So here, if I am sending that close, then what will happen is this int data will become equal to close, and the WebSocket server will reply telling that I'm closing it. But if I send open, so if my client is clicking on open, and I'll be sending data here. If I click on open, I'll be sending on data, and when it comes to the socket server, this is going to fail. So if this loop fails, then it is going to go here. So this is what is happening. And if I'm going to close the tab, then the while loop, this entire while loop that you see, that actually breaks. But it is not gonna increment, or it is not going to bring the index back to 0. The index will be same as where we left it. So this entire loop is going to just break out of this while loop. It's not going to go out and modify this index. So just keep that in mind, and that's how it works. So now we have actually seen a couple of things here. Let us refresh and recap. Just a second, let me catch my breath. Yeah, so we have seen how the front end and the Django backend as well as the WebSocket server all are working together. The Django server is serving the HTML page, and it is giving the necessary decorations like using the Bootstrap and also the Ginger templates. On top of it, it is also trying to serve, the Django server is serving the Client.js script that is going to connect with the WebSocket server, right? This is something done by the Django server. And for this, you need to know how to work with the static folders and static tag in Django Ginger templates. So that is one thing that we discussed. And second thing that we saw is how the Client.js has a very minimal amount of code, and how it is connecting with the WebSocket server at the backend, and how it is getting and pushing the data. That is. And second thing the Client.js does is, once it gets the data, it actually places the data into the DoM, that is the document object model inside the HTML page. Understanding the document object model, looking at the entire HTML page as a data structure is very, very crucial here. So you see this entire page here is actually a data structure that is having data inside it. Each of the data is clubbed with the tag, and the tag is getting updated. This way of visualizing the HTML page as a list or a data structure is going to modify how you look at the problems in the future. Next, what we saw is the WebSocket server itself. This socket server is separate from the Django server, and this WebSocket server has its own loops, its own logic, and it has two major parts. It has the handler part, where the logic of getting the messages from the front end or from the client is handled, and the handler itself is served as a server in the main function of the WebSocket server. So all these things we have seen, and we also realize that we also see that it can be pretty daunting if you are going to work on all this in this kind of architecture. It's going to be a little more confusing, right? But believe me, if we are going to create a WebSocket server that is going to connect with the database, and we are going to take that data and put it on the front end, all you need to do is, let's go back. All you need to do is, in this WebSocket server, you need to actually give an interface, or import a class or a kind of a psychopg2 or SQL ORM or PV ORM into this file, and you need to make the server, WebSocket server, to query the database. So you guys can try it out. The code is already present in the in the GitHub repo, I'll be sharing the code for that particular aspect also. So we have seen all these things here, what it takes, understanding the templates, how the templates are working, where to keep the index, this index.html, base HTML, where to keep this. We have seen this in this discussion. We understood how the static file folders can actually create a problem. We did not actually recreate the problem. If the problem occurs to you, if the client.js or if your the bootstrap min.css does not get served in the front end, then you should know how to modify the settings.py of the Django project and ensure that your static folder is getting served. Third, we saw the message protocol over the WebSockets. We saw how the WebSocket is having the path and the respective headers, and how the WebSocket is carrying the message to and back from the client using the client.js. And also we saw the control of the execution flow inside the WebSocket server itself. That is this socket_server. It's a simple Python script. It's not something very different. But what actually creates the difference is these await keywords. So these await keywords, these async IO sleep, these are all new for us. So guys coming from a regular Python world have to keep this in mind, that whenever you are trying to send anything, receive anything, or sleep something inside the async related functions, then ensure that you are awaiting these things. So you have to await the send, you have to await the sleep, you have to await the receive. So you have to do that. If you don't do it, then the server won't work. Again, you have to await async IO.future. So this is one of the most repeated mistakes that I have been committing, that I will use this async with serve, but I will forget to put await here. And if I don't put the await here, then this server will not serve, meaning it will not actually send the data to the front end. And it takes a bit of reviewing the code couple of times to remember that this has been missed out. So keep these things in mind. I believe that you have learned quite a lot in this discussion. It's been quite a long discussion. I believe that you will be able to practice these things and you can work it out. The next, I'll be diving into how to create a pair programmer with AI and using Django framework and front end and back end along with WebSockets. And stay tuned for that video. Till then, try to practice with WebSockets, try to work with the OpenAI, try to integrate with WebSockets, play with it. It's quite an interesting technology. Play with HTML and client.js. Client.js that you see are very, very simple. There are lots of simple clients that have written in this folder. So in this folder, especially in WebSocket Exploring, these folders will contain a lot of simple JavaScripts that you can easily understand if you have a basic knowledge on coding. So you actually don't need to understand JavaScript, by the way. If you understand basic logic, then these JavaScripts will be easy to read and you'll be able to do some Googling and you'll be able to find out what's happening there. So I believe that you like this video. Do leave a comment and a like. If you have any questions, I'll be able to answer in the comment section. Finally, do subscribe to my channel for further updates on similar kind of videos. Till the next video, practice WebSockets, practice WebSockets. See you guys. Have a great time.